Welcome to another episode of Shots from the Winchester podcast, where we explore leadership topics from a variety of perspectives. This podcast is brought to you by Greencastle Consulting, your nation's premier strategy execution firm. Today, we're talking about traveling, farming on a homestead, homeschooling, and family values with Daniel Beckers, father of 8, a consultant at Greencastle Consulting, and a major in the National Guard. Let's jump in. How much traveling have you done?
It's all through the military.
Yeah.
Well, I traveled in high school. I went to Fatima, Portugal on a pilgrimage, religious pilgrimage. Yep. So that was a nice trip. I think it was probably about a 8-day trip.
Okay.
But strictly Portugal.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple nice sites. I can't remember what they were.
Yeah.
We went around. There's some castles and things, and then after that, it was Afghanistan. So there's Afghanistan. I mean, call that traveling.
Mm-hmm.
We went around Afghanistan, a little bit of neighboring countries and stuff.
Yeah.
But I took leave from Afghanistan to Europe, so everybody else likes to go home.
Yeah.
But I was like 19 years old, and I'm like, I'm not going home until I'm done.
Yeah.
So I took the last leave slot, which I think was kind of wise. I waited until the very end, so I looked forward to the entire deployment. And we were only maybe 3 months out from leaving. And so I go on leave. And they said they'll fly you anywhere you want to go. And I knew a bunch of people that went to a college that had an Austrian campus in the foothills of the Austrian Alps. And so I said, fly me there. Yeah. Wow. So I actually had them fly me to Normandy. And so I wanted to visit Normandy on the way there. Wow. However, I thought I was taking this awesome, I was reducing the layover. So I said, oh, is there an airport nearby? And they're like, yeah. So I flew into that airport. Turns out there's this inlet that completely cuts you off from Normandy.
Really?
So I got there, and not only did my bags get messed up because I took this earlier flight, but also I was so far away from, as far as a drive, I was so far away from Normandy that it wasn't practical to get there.
Oh, wow.
Because I didn't have enough time to, I thought I'll fly in, I'll take a couple hours, I'll go see Normandy, and then I'll go to Austria. Yeah. Well, it would have taken so long and so much money to get around that. Then I guess there was no bridge.
Wow.
So I didn't go to Normandy. Yeah. But I went to Austria. And so I did a little traveling there. And then when I went to that university where they had the Austrian campus after I got back, they had a semester abroad program. Oh. And the military, ROTC, paid for it.
Wow.
For me to go, the overseas Austrian fee. And so I got to travel, and there was all these built-in trips. So we went to Rome, we went to Poland, I went to Cinque Terre, Italy, which is a northern portion of Italy on the western side. I went to France.
Nice.
Probably a bunch of other places.
But like they say in the Army, be all you can be. You can see the world.
So yeah, I could say, well, that wasn't through the Army, but I went because the Army was paying for it. I was on scholarship. Yeah. And they paid that fee. Wow. So all my traveling is with the Army.
Wow. Well, there's your benefits right there, Yeah. That's a good look. Traveling is really important, I think, for people to get to see something outside of the day-to-day monotony that we are always constantly going through, and it's more than just going on a vacation to Hawaii, or the Bahamas or something like that. Go to another country and experience that culture, and separate yourself for a bit. I've always traveled. Obviously, we're Americans. I've always traveled and been identified as an American, in some places they think I'm from there, but it's an interesting perspective when you leave America and you go to another country and you experience what they think of Americans. And you get that value from that because you can see there's a stark difference.
I think that when we were traveling, because there was a bunch of students, all kind of traveling together, we were really silly.
Yeah.
Kind of annoyed people.
Yeah.
But what I remember finding was that people tend to travel city to city. If you're going to go to Austria, you go to Vienna. Yeah. If you're going to go to France, you're going to go to Paris. Right. But what I found to be more valuable was to go to non-cities. In fact, there was a friend of mine who, when we were in Austria, instead of traveling to one of the big trips, he there was some family friend connection where somebody in rural Austria had a vineyard, and he went on like a 3-day weekend to that vineyard, and he helped them pick grapes, and they made wine.
Oh, wow.
Like, so this guy,
what an experience.
He skipped some city visit, and he went and picked grapes and made wine in rural Austria. Like, that sounds outstanding.
I'm always like, experience over stuff. You know, like, I would rather buy, if I'm going to spend money, I'd rather go and experience something with that money versus like use that money for the experience versus like buy a $5,000 suit jacket.
Oh yeah.
You know, or like or get that Audi, you know, get that next lease, you know.
That's true.
You know, I think that experiences are what we're made of, and then when it's all said and done, we're in our final rest, you know. That's what we're going to look back on. We're going to look back on it, and if we have any regrets, it'll be because we didn't spend enough time.
Yeah.
Because time is very much more valuable than any kind of value that you can put on money or stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's having time with family, having time to share with other people.
I think that's interesting because if you to look at my life and the way that my wife and I have kind of built our home and our family. Yeah, we don't have a lot of stuff. I mean, we have a lot of stuff, but it's not a lot of nice stuff.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody has the amount of rolled up fencing that I have behind my garage. So technically I have maybe more stuff.
Plentiful.
But not nice stuff. But I think it's because, like, we could afford to have, if we simplified our life a little bit, which simple is many times good, but if we were to simplify what we're doing, we would lose out on some experiences, like with the farming stuff. And but we could take that money and we could buy a nicer car.
Yeah.
Like, I just bought a 2010 Honda Odyssey, and I'm through the roof excited about it.
Yeah.
I sold the 2006 that I didn't like. I bought a 2010. It is 14 years old.
Yeah.
You know, but we like it.
Yeah.
And it's going to meet the needs that we have.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we can take money that maybe we would have spent on that, and we can get pigs.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
Or we can go on a trip to Connecticut. You know, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Let's talk about that actually, since we're bridging in talking about family and stuff. You have 8 kids.
8 kids.
Yeah. You just had a new kid, girl, boy?
A girl, Bernadette Rose. Yeah.
Bernadette Rose. That's a beautiful name.
Yeah. Thank you.
And so 8 kids. You also have a farm?
A little farm.
Yeah.
We call it a homestead.
A home, okay.
Yeah, so some people might call it like a farmette. It's 3 acres. Wow. But it feels like it's in rural. So across the street, you can't see the neighborhood because there's a couple houses blocking it, but you could take the road in there, and it's a normal neighborhood.
Yeah.
Not very far away from Reading. Just south of Reading. But when you cross over to my side of the street, the properties have more acreage, and you can't see my house from the street. So you go down a long driveway. It's shared with a 8-acre horse farm next door. So when we look out our window, we don't see the road. We see horses in the pasture that comes right up to the border of our properties. And trees and everything. So it feels very rural, but it's got the convenience of all the stores and things. But it's 3 acres. And the reason why we got into that and why we are doing so much with 3 acres is because my wife, when we moved here, said she wanted a garden. You know, I was like, that'd be great. You know, maybe we'll get chickens or something. But she put a book, it was called Homesteading or something like that, on 1/4 of an acre. And, I picked it up and I was looking at it and I was like, wow, if you can do all that on 1/4 of an acre, I've got 3 acres. You know, like I could do so much stuff. So we went nuts. We bought all the materials to build a garden with 8-foot deer fence to keep the deer out. And we planted trees for orchards, all the raised beds and everything. We got chickens kind of more gradually. My wife is a little bit more prudent and wise. I'd rather just go do it all now. So we kind of been phasing it in, kind of going with her wisdom. So we got the garden, and then we got chickens, and we got ducks and a goose, and we got turkeys. We've raised things through hatching them. We've let them hatch themselves. We've incubated them. We've bought them from hatcheries. So we get the kids the opportunity to see the beginning, and then we do harvest. So we will take the meat, and so they get to kind of see the full process of where the food comes from. The work that it takes to get it. Same thing right now. My wife is at home canning with my kids.
Wow.
So our education is really built around the homesteading. It's not the only thing we do. We do the academic subjects. But I find, actually, I gotta be honest, I don't know that we actually do science as an academic subject, where we have a book and we sit down with it. But this year we grew potatoes. Well, we needed to learn about potatoes, so we'll bring videos up, we'll break out some books about gardening and doing potatoes, and we'll do a lot of research before we embark on potatoes. And we got 150 pounds of potatoes this year. It was a great success. Every one that we planted was successful. For potatoes.
That's
fantastic. So the kids get to do the science, and I think that's the real benefit of the homestead and the homeschooling, is that they can do the science. They're not just going to read about it. They're not going to I think about how we dissected a frog. We talked about that earlier. We dissected a frog. It was kind of interesting, It was the big highlight of the year. Oh, this is the year. I don't know what it was, sophomore year, when we get to dissect the frog. Well, they get anatomy lessons when I bring home deer, or when we do harvest chickens, or those kinds of things, and they get lessons because poultry gets different diseases or different like poultry lice or things like that, and you have to solve those problems.
And different seasons of hunting as well. So like you're hunting certain seasons you shouldn't hunt because the meat's not going to be good, or they're in more of a period of time where there could be more disease.
So I actually only hunt deer. Not that I wouldn't hunt other things. I think that there's some pretty cool hunting. Like I've had a couple friends that did duck hunting. And that sounds like a more challenging hunt. You actually got to get full ghillie suit, face paint, camo. And the ducks are not going to fly down to where you're at unless they feel 100% safe. You're doing decoys and everything. Deer is a little bit different. You're kind of just trying to be quiet, let them walk up on you. So that would be pretty neat, but I don't have time for that. I need to get a lot of meat in a short amount of time. But yeah, there's the season of the deer. Like, for example, people don't know this. A deer drops their antlers every year. I didn't know that for a while.
They go velvet.
So they drop their antlers. I think it's in like the winter time. And after the hunting season's kind of over, they drop their antlers and then they start growing them back, and they grow back and they have this velvet on them. And then that deer, the rubbing that they do against trees, which hunters will look for to see if there's a buck around, they're rubbing it off. So it's pretty interesting, the cycle there of of hunting. So we do hunting, we do homesteading, we got animals and farming or gardening. And we're homeschooling. So it's all happening.
Another subject. I definitely want to get into this. Homeschooling, because I have a little one on the way. And we're thinking about doing the same thing, homeschooling. At least up until third grade, and then we'll figure it out. But my wife was homeschooled as well for a while, until I think maybe sixth grade. So like she's very comfortable with that. The curriculum, I'm really like into like figuring out how to like teacher science and other things, and going to different places and getting that value out of life, and giving her a better chance than I did when I first got in, because like we mentioned before, I was in special education, and I think I got pigeonholed into something, not realizing that it would be so encompassing for my entire career in high school, from elementary school to high school, and then it wasn't until after I left school and did my own personal education, learning how to do videography and everything like that, that I actually learned that I know how to teach myself. Maybe it was the fact that there were 30 plus kids in these classes, and I didn't get that same individualized attention that I needed. Because you can't educate 30 kids the exact same way, because the law of averages, the 30 people that are in that classroom, chances are they're not all going to learn the same way.
Right, sure.
What value are you getting, or do you see from homeschooling?
So I think homeschooling, the main benefits are going to be, number one, it's a teacher who knows the student beyond the classroom.
Yeah.
So when the student says they get it, like, oh yeah, I understand. The parent knows if they truly do.
Yeah.
You know. Also, there's a couple other dynamics. So there's the student teacher ratio. That does present a challenge because now, like my wife, we have 8 kids. My wife is primarily the one teaching them. Now they're not all being homeschooled right now.
Yeah.
But I think she's adding the 5th one this year.
Oh.
So now she has 5 different ages that she's teaching.
Yeah.
So there's a challenge there. But that's not possible if you do it from a completely traditional curriculum standpoint.
Yeah.
This is a self-learning atmosphere. So it's not, people picture, okay, my wife is in a classroom, she's got the book open for the teacher, and then the one kid has the book open for them, and she spends 50 minutes teaching them a subject. That's not how it goes.
Like you would think in high school.
Absolutely not how it goes. It would be impossible, I think, to do it that way. The books that we get are mostly designed to be the student reading the lesson, and if they need help, they go to the teacher.
Yeah.
And part of why we wanted to do homeschooling is because we knew a guy. I knew a guy from high school who had a little homestead kind of like ours. He raised oxen. His sister raised goats, and they were in 4-H. They were tops of their class.
Yeah.
Because they did come to high school. So they were homeschooled up to high school.
Yeah.
Well, he's a doctor. So very intelligent guy.
Yeah.
Very capable academically. And he was homeschooled.
Right.
And he was socially excellent.
Yeah.
So so my impression of homeschooling was positive from a distance. And so I thought, okay, well, if we can, part of what made him so successful in college is when you get to college, there's so much self-learning that you do because the teacher is going to give you the lecture, but sometimes they're not really counting for your attendance the way that they are in high school. You have to come. And so if you miss the lecture, then you have to make up for it. You have to figure out what you're learning so that you can pass the course.
Like adult rules when it comes
and I do think that self-learning is really where a lot of programs are in college. So if you are dependent upon the teacher in high school, you're not necessarily going to succeed in college. I also think, especially with like consulting, the ability to go find your own answers is super necessary skill to have. People who are dependent on somebody else are going to be slowed down because people are busy, and finding the right person who knows the answer can be challenging. If you go get that answer on your own, you're going to be more successful. So I think there's the self-learning aspect. It's the fact that the teacher is more intimate with the student, knows them personally. It's the flexibility of the timeline. So we can start school at 9 today, but tomorrow, if there's something going on in the morning, we had a person coming to tune our piano. That was very distracting for the kids because they were really excited about it. So maybe we start at 11. And you can pause, you can have lunch, you can have a more, I don't know if it's well-rounded, but I kind of think of it that way, a more well-rounded family atmosphere, because you're not finding out about your kid's day, you're living your kid's day with you. And that was another big reason. I love my wife. When we were engaged, I thought, I'm picking you because I want you for my kids. I want my kids to have a great mom. I have a lot of trust in you. So you're the one that I want them to spend the majority of their day with. It's your values that I trust to impart them onto the kids during the school day.
Nice.
So those are some of those benefits. And then also I think that we can do more subjects, because I was mentioning how with the homesteading, we're living science. All my kids cook. They're canning, they're processing deer or chickens or whatever. They're collecting eggs, they're gardening. Part of their day is garden chores. They have animal chores. They have responsibility. So they live the science. We put history on CD in the car. We do a lot of hour-long drives to church. So we've put on the history CD. So honestly, we don't teach history as a standalone subject. We get it in the car, and they know it. It's the repetition of those more exciting stories.
Yeah.
And so because we're not doing science as a standalone subject or history, we're able to add in a few things. We're able to add in the understanding our religion and our faith.
Yeah.
That would be something that we would have to do in the evenings if we were sending them to school. So I think that there's greater ability. We also don't have to worry about the time lost getting to school,
right?
Homeroom, transition between classes, that kind of thing. So I think we can fill those with. We can also do school on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
There's opportunities to go to fairs. There's actually for military veterans you can go for free to the Strasbourg Train Museum.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's this huge indoor facility that has, I don't know, 30 plus trains.
Yeah.
Anywhere from more modern trains to really
steam engines and
all that.
Yeah.
You can even ride it. That is a cost. But if you're military, you can go there for free.
Wow.
And so the whole family, we can go there. So that's another science.
Yeah.
That's also history.
Yeah.
Another thing to there's so many benefits, but when the teacher, it's the same teacher, she can build a curriculum to be, okay, if we're going to talk about this particular period of history, we can also do literature from that period of history. There might be inventions during that period of history that we could talk about. Yeah. So it can be really integrated, all the lessons. But if you're going from this classroom to this classroom to this classroom, it might not be as integrated. It could be,
right,
depending on the school. Some schools do a really good job of that. But I think you can integrate that so the kids are learning. If they're doing some poetry, it's from the time period that they're studying.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
How do you judge their competency in that process? Yeah.
So my standards are below my wife's.
Yeah.
I keep saying she's exceeding everything I thought we were going to have, as far as teaching them. And number one, I would say, when we look at all of human history, people were mostly illiterate for most of human history.
Oh, yeah.
My kids are reading like 50 plus chapter books a year.
Wow.
They do this thing. So there's an evaluation. Okay. So we have to have an independent evaluator that will sit down with the kids, and they'll look at the portfolio and they'll talk to them to kind of just make sure that we are teaching them.
Yeah.
And my kids like to take this picture with all the books stacked up that they read. Yeah. And I had no idea how many books these kids were reading.
Wow.
But when I saw that picture, and my wife said it was like 53 books for one of them, I was blown away. I was like, well, is this 53 kind of like little kid books, that like thin 10 pages? No, these are chapter books. Lord of the Rings.
Whoa.
They're not all Lord of the Rings length, but anywhere from 100 pages to whatever the Lord of the Rings length is.
Yeah.
And they'll reread them. So because they're doing a lot of reading, and my wife, that comes from her, she does a lot of reading, they're way beyond the kind of standards that they're being tested for.
Yeah.
Because they love reading.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't find it difficult to exceed the standards. We do. There's testing each year for Pennsylvania. You have a standardized test that you have to take, and it tells you what grade your kids are scoring at. So it doesn't just test, are you good for this grade?
Yeah.
It's, where are you at? And so it'll tell you you're at a 7th grade in math for this particular type of math, or you're in whatever. And honestly, we're busy, 8 kids. My wife, the pregnancies are not easy.
Yeah.
They're challenging to homeschool during pregnancies.
Yeah.
Moving houses.
Yeah.
With the military, changing jobs even creates an instability in the home. So even through all those periods of difficulty, they're exceeding what I guess you would say you should be at for the different subjects. Wow. By a particular year.
That's awesome.
So I think that I attribute that to, obviously, my wife is great.
Yeah.
But even in the periods when we're distracted, I think that the home atmosphere, the more relaxed atmosphere, you're not in that competition necessarily with the other kids.
Yeah.
You're not being left behind because you're too embarrassed to say, I don't understand this. I think that those kind of those are a great environment for a kid to really thrive.
Yeah.
So I think that fortunately at this point, we haven't reached high school yet.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's all good.
Yeah. Some of the kids in school in the city, especially in their inner city and some of the public schools and charter schools, I've experienced where some of them that are in the 9th, 10th, 11th grade, but they're reading at a 5th grade level. I feel like there's a disservice there. I think what happens is a lot of schools get caught up with numbers and meeting those numbers so that they can continue to get budgets and things like that. And so it becomes less of the education and more of the maintenance of maintaining the organization or the school in itself, you know. And I think that's sad. But to hear that you're just at home homeschooling and that is getting them to a level that they're reading at a higher level than some of the 9th and 10th graders are in some of the charter schools in Philadelphia, and they're not even in high school yet.
I think it's because my wife loves reading.
Yeah.
And she gave that to them. So that's I would call that a gift.
Yeah.
She gave the gift of reading and loving it to them. Her father is a big reader.
Yeah.
So I would say that, okay, so when I was in high school, the guidance counselor, the freshman, I don't know if it was guidance counselor. It was like, maybe there was like a principal per grade or an assistant principal that was assigned to that grade. And they had this method where that person, so when I was in freshman year, I would be covered by that person. When I moved to sophomore year, I wouldn't have a new person. It would be the same. He would grow with the students. And I think that the growth with a student is one of the great benefits of homeschooling, because your teacher continues to know them. And I know that was a vice principal or something like that. Maybe not quite as equal, but I think that the longer the teacher has with a student, the more they can kind of understand them. And also, my wife had the opportunity, I think she really, in the earlier years of homeschooling, prioritized reading out loud. So they had to read out loud. So she would read some kind of interesting story, and all the ages would enjoy it. And every age is going to get something different out of that story.
Yeah.
There's things, you watch like an animated like Disney film. The adults are hearing some of the humor that the kids aren't getting. The kids are laughing at some things that the parents don't find as funny.
Right.
But everybody can kind of get into it. I think that the stories that she picked out were accomplishing that same thing. Nice. Where, the 5-year-old would like to listen just as well as the 12-year-old.
Yeah.
But at the end, she would require retelling. And then, so they had to demonstrate that they were paying attention, that they can articulate what they got out of the story. They had to do their own individual reading for a timed amount of time. So I would say our education so far its greatest foundation is in reading. Reading first, because then that sets them up so that if they open up their math book and they're doing a new concept today, they read the lesson. And as long as they understand it, they can do the math lesson without her help. Then if they don't understand it, then she comes in and she'll brush up on it, because we all have to brush up. So
math keeps evolving on us.
I would say, if the foundation is reading, if the foundation of the whole education approach is reading, the kid's going to love it, and they're going to take it on their own, and then you probably wouldn't have that same gap when you get to high school of I didn't read. I'm not a reader to this day. I think that that's a loss for me. But I could get away with not reading in school, because I don't think the foundation wasn't reading. It was all the different subjects pretty equally. So,
Good. What's your wife's name?
Teresa.
Shout out to Teresa. You are doing an amazing job, clearly. Your husband's putting out some great accolades for you. This is amazing. Oh, speaking of which, you're a major in the National Guard?
In the National Guard.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So so you were in ROTC.
So I enlisted first.
You enlisted first?
I enlisted at 17.
Okay.
So I was up at MEPS, the enlistment station, on my birthday.
Okay.
I had parent approval to join.
I
joined between junior and senior year of high school. I went to boot camp between those, which is very strange.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would recommend it necessarily.
Nothing. Yeah.
I was very shocked, like it was a bit out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But then I came back and did senior year while doing the 1 week in a month. Anyway, so I did 8 years enlisted. I deployed to Afghanistan, and then I did ROTC, and I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship, and so then ever since that point, so in my 8th year, I got commissioned as an officer.
Nice.
I went a different route. I was enlisted infantry, and then I went logistics when I commissioned.
So what was your butter bar years like?
Well, it was a little easier for me because I had 8 years enlisted. And even though I was a slow learner, I'm telling you, like I was in trouble frequently. I was not like a top soldier when I was in my early years.
Yeah.
That took some time. But because I had those 8 years and I had the deployment, when I did get commissioned, I was able to relate a bit more, I think, to the enlisted soldiers.
Yeah.
And I got the immediate, I don't know if it was like full respect of the senior non-commissioned officers, but it was, you do get kind of what you wear on your uniform, the badges you have and things, the combat patch. You automatically get some kind of credit. Yeah. Whereas butter bars tend to not get any credit.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate enough to have that boost. And I had a lot of passion.
Yeah.
And I think that those two things together made for a pretty successful platoon leader time.
Nice.
I really enjoyed being a platoon leader.
That's great. Yeah. Well, thank you for your service and thank you for your continued service.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I want to get into one last thing before we close this out.
Sure, yeah.
As a major, you're a leader. And you're also a leader here at Greencastle. You're what is your position here again?
Associate Management Consultant.
Associate Management Consultant. Do you have any maybe a story or a lesson that the audience can get from that perspective as a leader?
Yeah, so I would also include. I think that moms and dads are leaders also.
Yes.
So it's nice that the kind of all three things that I do tend to have leadership as kind of like the common. The overlap.
Yeah.
Interesting. So a story that kind of highlights leadership. I don't know. I think generally speaking, my style of leadership, and I'm by no means an expert. I don't feel I'm learning a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't like to go full intensity. I don't like to correct unless I'm 100%.
Yeah.
So sometimes that feels like a limitation because sometimes it's hard to get to 100%.
Yeah.
But I don't like to come hard down on somebody if I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Because if there's a sliver of chance so benefit of the doubt, I think is extremely important. That's why one of the things I love about Greencastle is the adult rules and the assume positive intent.
Yeah.
That people are complicated. People's situations are complicated.
Yeah.
You don't always know exactly what happened. So taking the opportunity to give them the benefit of the doubt, assume positive intent.
Yeah.
Even if you're wrong.
Yeah.
So sometimes people's concern might be, well, what if I give the benefit of the doubt and it turns out that they were intentionally whatever.
Yeah.
I think that you store rapport points that eventually you can kind of circle back to that issue. Let's just say the person needed correction.
Yeah.
And you didn't give it. You gave benefit of the doubt. You might feel a little bit like they got the better of you.
Right.
But what you did for them is you stored in their mind that you're reasonable, that you're somebody that they want to perform for.
Yeah.
That you're not their enemy.
Yeah.
And I think that they're more likely to try to improve on their own because they value your leadership.
Yeah.
And they want to keep that relationship solid. And then in the event that the behavior continues, when you do eventually correct it, I think that they know that you're not jumping to a conclusion.
Yeah.
You've taken the time to recognize what's truly going on. So I think that is a pretty important value for leadership.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily a story.
No, it's okay. It's a good lesson.
There's a lot. Yeah. But I think it's helpful in management consulting because we jump into situations that aren't always very clear, and it's kind of hard to know what's going on. And sometimes the first impression is not accurate. I think oftentimes. Yeah. And so I might get into a project and I think this person, they're really outspoken. They're my go-to. They know what's going on, and this person's quiet. But that person who's quiet might even have a better perspective of what's going on. They might even be the resident expert.
Right.
But if you kind of slow down, assume positive intent, you give benefit of doubt to everyone, you start to unravel what's really going on, and you can make a better decision, I think. Yeah.
That's smart. That's good content out there. Thank you so much for that. Daniel Beckers, thank you for being on the show. It's been a minute. Then we've been trying to get this to go down. So thank you so much for finding the time and making it happen this time around. So do you have anything else you want to say? You want to give any shout outs to anybody?
No, I know we talked about my beautiful wife, Teresa, and she's blown my mind with the way that she's finding a way to educate them so well, despite all of the things that, all the wrenches that get thrown with just normal family life, and she's doing a great job. So thank you.
That's a beautiful thing. Good man. Thank you so much again for being here on the show. And guys, make sure you like and subscribe, because we put out good content like this all the time. Check us out on our other social media channels too, because we have an Instagram channel. We're on LinkedIn. Besides just being on YouTube and on Spotify and on Apple Podcast, check us out however you like to ingest this type of content. And on behalf of Greencastle Consulting, your nation's premier strategy execution firm, I'm your host, Al Green, Daniel Beckers. We'll see you in the next episode.